I'm so glad that so many of you could be here today for this groundbreaking event. Again, I'm just honored and humbled to be here today. And as I look out into the crowd, I see family, I see friends, I see veterans, I see first responders, and I see my Marine Corps brothers. I don't know about y'all, but I sure do feel a lot safer with those guys around. I hope you guys brought a lunch, because this is not only an event, but a continuation to a story that must be told, a story that should never be forgotten. And that, my friends, is why we're here today. Bill and I first met in Colusa Middle School, 7th grade. Full life. I don't know if you guys know this, maybe you guys that maybe went to high school with Bill. He was a fast dude. The man could run. We met in 7th grade, our friendship grew. We continued on to Norfolk Myers High School. Bill and his family eventually moved to Port Charlotte, and we kind of lost contact a little bit. If you guys remember, we didn't even have cell phones back then. We both joined the Marine Corps, kind of unbeknownst to each other, and we hooked up in Miami at AAFES during the station for our physicals and our swearing in. Here is where we reconnected. And originally, I had joined the Marine Corps as an MOS, as communications. And somehow or another, in that room that night, Bill Gaines talked me into becoming a grunt. Yeah. I got $2,500 for that decision. So we reconnected. Bill and I, we went to boot camp together, June of 1981, Parris Island. Who picks June of any summer to go to Parris Island? We couldn't have picked a better time. We were forever changed. After graduating from boot camp, we connected briefly with Bill's family. I distinctly remember we had pizza, and we told war stories at boot camp. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, this is the first time that you and I would meet. Michael was about that high. But I remember he was so proud of his brother, who seemed larger than life. We went on to infantry training school together. After ITS, we were assigned together in the same platoon, same company, same battalion. 2nd Platoon, Alpha Company, 1st Battalion, 8th Marines, 2nd Marine. I want you to remember these next words. We became close. Eventually, unique little story, and I don't want to distract from anything that's happening here today. But our company, our battalion, and there might be a few in the audience today that remember this. Fresh out of ITS, our battalion was already in 29 Palms, California for a training exercise. 29 Palms, California is a full-blown live fire training exercise. Bill and I, we got off a plane, big old C-41 Air Force, thank you very much. Good chicken dinners on those planes. We got off the plane, we were told to pack our trash, get ready for the field. Immediately, within minutes of dropping our gear, we were out in the middle of the field, introduced to our new platoon. Talk about scared. Bill was a year older than I. I was 17, Bill was 18 years old. That night was our first live fire exercise. That night, one Marine, Sergeant Maine, and 2 other Marines were wounded. Sergeant Maine was killed that night. You talk about a wake-up call to reality. Marines train for war. There is a saying, the more we sweat in peace, the less we bleed in war. Bill would eventually marry Carol, the absolute love of his life. I want to transport you to our first float, which was in 1982. Just a quick description. A float is where Marines get on Navy ships. Thank you, Navy. Love you guys. Good job. Actually, in that first float in 1982, if you remember your history correctly, that's when the first Marines actually went into Beirut. But our first float in 82 was nothing but a glorious cruise, just like Carnival Cruise Lines. Port of calls in places you can only imagine. It was a good time, but we were also thinking about our brothers that were in Beirut. We missed it. During the down times, we laughed and we lived our lives. Carol, even though she was the same age as us, she acted as a stable force for us, even for us, those who are single, wayward Marines, by providing a comfortable home away from home, always ready with a meal and a hug, and more importantly, a prayer. We didn't have much money then, but we sure loved life. We loved our God, we loved our country, and we loved our Corps. Bill was extremely mature for his age, a guy whose integrity and honesty oozed. Loyalty to the Corps, you could always count on Bill Gaines. When Marines are not on float, they are training for the next one. When I say train, I mean train for war. Understand that we were still, that during that time period, we were still in the Cold War. Russia, frontal assaults, big time enemy. In fact, the Berlin Wall hadn't even come down yet. Bill would eventually transfer to HQ headquarters, become a trained sniper as well as S2. Our second float was not a party cruise. This was the float, just like the Navy chaplain had mentioned. It was full steam ahead, straight to Beirut. I believe there was one stop in Rota, Spain. Gentlemen, correct me if I'm wrong. Refuel, resupply, and we were on our way. Battalion Landing Team 1-8 was assembled. We were attached to the 24th Marine Amphibious Unit, and we headed on over. We arrived in country on May 29th, 1983. I was actually part of the advanced shore party. But by the time we arrived, April 18th had already passed. And if those of you that remember April 18th, it brought one of the first real modern day acts of terrorism toward America with the bombing of our embassy, which resulted in the deaths of 63 souls, with 17 of those being Americans. It was a crazy summer, to say the least. Firefights became more frequent, patrols increased, positions in Marine companies rotated in and out of and around Beirut. More Marines would be wounded and killed. By the time September rolled around, firefights became more intense as well as extended. My company, Alpha Company, and there's some gentlemen in the crowd today, can attest that outside of the Beirut bombing, the headquarters bombing, Alpha Company probably had more KIAs, wounded AIAs, than any other company. When we got positioned in September to what was called the University of Beirut, we were stationed at what we called the Science Building. That was our position. Many Marines had already been there before us. Firefights even became more intense as well as extended. In fact, Alpha Company would be involved in what would later be described as a siege that lasted for almost 72 hours, leaving one dead and many wounded while at the position. On the front as well as perimeter, security increased and the fighting escalated. Whenever Bill and I would see each other by chance, we would always share information and pray for each other. Bill was always concerned with the line units, always telling me to keep my head down. HQ was considered a much safer place to be, in the rear, so to speak. I never felt that comfort. I worried because of the lax of the rules of engagement. Out on the line, you were ready. The BLT had hot showers and chow. We became closer. Calm before the storm. There always is. The early morning of October 23rd brings calm. But at 6:22 a.m. in the morning, and seconds before, history would be forever changed by the cowardly and murderous terrorist act that would later be described as the largest non-nuclear explosion on record, with over 2,000 pounds of explosive that would claim the lives of 241 service members, which of 220 were Marines. This act would be the deadliest act and the greatest loss of life for the Marine Corps since Iwo Jima in 1945. And how fitting that we are here today, February 23rd. That is when the flag was raised on Mount Suribachi. Moments later, another attack would take place on the French position, which resulted in an additional loss of 58 French paratroopers. America's never alone. The British were there, the French were there, other contingencies were there, other organizations were there. We gathered today to break ground on not just another park. We do not gather today to build just another memorial. We do not break ground to memorialize a man or a service. We break ground because of an idea that rang true with our founding fathers, and that, my friend, is freedom. We break ground today to remember those freedoms. We break ground to remember those who have given their last full measure. This park is for all, but especially to those who have served and given more than their families, their hometowns, their counties, and their country ever expected them to give. They gave their all. Their sacrifices are great. Just talk to a gold member, star member, and you will see just how great. First responders share the same love, devotion to duty, and commitment as veterans do. Thank you so much for your speech. I really appreciated that. The ties between veterans and first responders run deep. Marines and first responders, sorry, Michael, I know you're Army, but okay. We're trained to run to the fight, not away from it. This park and the proposed tower, beautiful pictures over there you'll see, is the vision and dream of one individual who actually epitomizes the Marine Corps motto, and that is Michael Gaines, Bill's brother. Without his steadfast faithfulness to this vision would not have become a reality. His work on this project has been nothing less than extraordinary, exemplifying true love for a brother lost. When Michael first showed me the preliminary drawings of what he was trying to convey, I literally cried. Little did he know just how close he came to perfection in description and design that so greatly affected me to my core. To see this design and to remember what the BLT looked like before the blast is humbling. To see the raw concrete, the floors, even the stairwells leading up to the top, the hollow center, even the gray color is reminiscent and has deep meaning for those who remember. The structure needs little interpretation, but it also leaves much room to be interpreted. To a veteran who was there, they will know. This structure may also have even a deeper meaning to first responders as well, very reminiscent of a fire training tower or a police training center. Our hope is that those who come will find their own meaning and purpose. The structure will have many more meanings built into it as well as tell the story. The structure will be named Spyglass and Habitat. This too has great meaning. I won't share and go into detail why we called that here today, in the hopes that when we come back and experience the full effect once built. It is a story that must be told for generations to come. To the veterans, to the first responders, to the families, this is for you. It is for you to have a place to not only come and enjoy, but to come home to remember and to reflect on the sacrifices of our loved ones, but also to those who came before us. We hope that this will become a place for healing and closure. This is your home. Semper Fortis, Vigilante, Paratus, et Fidelis, which is to say, always strong, always vigilant, always ready, and always faithful. Semper Fi. Thank you.